Hey everybody, this is Bob Iacino along with Mike Arnold from Path Trading Partners with your weekly Path Chat covering the Forex markets. It is April 2nd, day after April Fool's Day. We didn't record this on April Fool's Day so that nobody thought we were kidding about all the good information we give. Let's start off with this evening's calendar. We have the Japanese Tenkan Report, the Large Manufacturers Index. Basically, there's a slew of these things. There's non-manufacturing index, non-manufacturing outlook, large all-industry capex. There's about 6 of these things that come out all at once. They come out at 6:50 Central Time, 7:50 Eastern Time. And rather than go through each one of them, they're all expected to do a little bit better than the last time. All right, you're looking at estimates of 14 versus 10, 13 versus 8, 19 versus 18, 19 versus 16. The only one that's supposed to be weaker is the large all-industry CapEx, which is supposed to be down 0.3% versus plus 5.5% last time it came out. We've got building approvals and securities inflation year over year in Australia. Neither one of those should move the markets too much. Monday, April 3rd, Swiss retail sales year over year expected to be unchanged. We've also got the Swiss Purchasing Managers Index, which we expect to be at 58 versus 57.8 last time. You've got the UK's market PMI Manufacturing Index for March. That comes out 4:30 in the morning Eastern Time, 3:30 Central Time. That's supposed to be 55 versus 54.6 last. And we've got Eurozone unemployment rate, 5 a.m. Eastern Time, 4 a.m. Central Time. That's supposed to come out at 9.5. It was 9.6 last. Starting at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central Time, Canada's market manufacturing PMI for March expected to be unchanged at 54.7. And then we've got at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern, U.S. ISM manufacturing and ISM prices paid. The ISM manufacturing for the U.S. is supposed to come out slightly lower, 57.1 versus 57.7 last. And the prices paid is supposed to be slightly lower as well, 66 versus 68. If you remember last week, we saw the dropping of a bunch of the GDP estimates. We talked about that on the Money Path podcast. If you want to listen to that, seems like the estimates for the economic data are starting to come down as well. Same time, we've got construction spending month over month, which is supposed to be up 1% versus down 1% last, going contrary to the lower estimates for the prior economic releases I just spoke of. We've got the Japanese monetary base year over year, 6:50 Central, 7:50 Eastern Time, and the monetary base end of period. Neither one of those come with estimates. And then we've got Aussie Reserve Bank rate decision, the April 4th rate decision, expected to be unchanged at 1.5% on the overnight rate. Going into Tuesday, we've got UK's market CIPS construction PMI for March. Supposed to come out unchanged at 52.5. That's at 3:30 in the morning Central, 4:30 Eastern. We've got Eurozone retail sales year over year, which is supposed to be slightly lower, 1% versus 1.2. That comes out a half an hour later. And then 7:30 in the morning Central Time, 8:30 Eastern, US dollar trade balance. That's supposed to be down 44.7 billion versus down 48.5 billion last. So it's supposed to be shrinking, but shrinking less than it did last time. More important than that, 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern, Mario Draghi speaking in Frankfurt. So we'll see what he says, if he's got anything to say about the slightly weaker GDP that we saw in the Eurozone last. Then at 9 a.m. Central, 10 Eastern Time, we've got U.S. factory orders for February and durable goods orders for February. Factory order is supposed to come in at 0.9 versus 1.2 last. No estimate for durable goods. This is the final of the February durable goods. So it's expected to come out unchanged at up 1.7, which is where it came in the second estimate. We've also got at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern Time, Nikkei PMI on services and composite. Neither one of those will move the market too much. Going into Wednesday, we've got services PMI in the UK and composite PMI in the UK, 3:30 a.m. Central Time, 4:30 Eastern Time, both expected to be ever so slightly higher, 53.5 and 53.8. We've got mortgage applications in the US And we've got the ADP employment change. That'll be the first number telling us in the U.S. if the non-farm is expected higher. Those numbers don't correlate over long periods of history, but they have correlated lately. The ADP employment change is supposed to be plus 189,000 jobs versus plus 298 last month. If you remember when that 298 last month happened, a lot of houses bumped up their non-farm payroll number and it ended up being a pretty strong number. We've also got the ISM services, the non-manufacturing composite for March. That's supposed to come out a little bit lower at 57 versus 57.6 last. The normal Department of Energy crude inventories, that's 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. And then we've got the FOMC minutes for March 15th, which should be very interesting. People are going to be watching that to see if there's any clue as to how aggressive the Fed was actually feeling at that particular meeting. Seems to have dialed down a bit since then, but the meeting minutes could tell us that it was always dialed down or it was much more aggressive of a tone than we thought in the first place. That's 1 o'clock Eastern. 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Then we've got foreign bond buying in Japan. That'll be 6:50 Central, 7:50 Eastern Time. No estimates on that. More importantly, China's Caixin PMI composite and Caixin PMI services. Not as important as the manufacturing number, but you want to see where it comes in versus last. Both of those last were at 52.6. That's actually going to come out at about 8:45 Central Time, 9:45 Eastern Time. Going into Thursday, Japan's consumer confidence comes out exactly at midnight from Wednesday to Thursday. The consumer confidence is for March, supposed to come out at 43.4 versus 43.1. German factory orders, that's a year-over-year number. Won't move the market much. It's a smaller watch number. Expected to be at 3.6, though, versus down 0.8 last. Again, we've got Draghi speaking. That'll be at 2 a.m. Central Time, 3 a.m. Eastern Time. He is speaking again in Frankfurt. Then 2:15 Central, 3:15 Eastern, Swiss Consumer Price Index year over year. And then you've also got the EU harmonized CPI. Okay, that is specific to Switzerland. It's not an EU number. Okay, they just name it the EU harmonized CPI. That's year over year. They're both expected to come out at 0.5. The Swiss consumer price was 0.6 last, and the harmonized year over year was 0.7 last. So they're both supposed to be slightly weaker than they were last time. We've got the Euro market German construction PMI and the Euro market retail PMI for March. Those won't move the market that much. Those are at 2:30 and 3:10 Central, 3:30 and 4:10 Eastern. Getting back onto this side of the ocean, 7:30 a.m. Central, 8:30 Eastern, Canadian building permits, month over month for February. And then you've got the U.S. jobless claims number and continuing claims number, just like we have it every week. 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern Time. Jobless supposed to come in at 250,000 versus 258 last. Continuing claims, 2,040,000 versus 2,052,000 last. Moving on to Friday. Friday will be a huge day today. Friday at midnight Central, Japanese leading index and Japanese coincident index for February. These are preliminary numbers. The data goes all the way back to February. 104.6 versus 104.9 and 115.6 versus 115.1. This, obviously, it's a Japanese number, but this number tends to move the dollar yen quite a bit. Switzerland unemployment rate, 12:45 Central Time, 1:45 Eastern. That's expected to be at 3.4% versus 3.6 last. We've got German industrial production and Germany's trade balance. Won't move the market that much. The industrial production could if it comes out as a big surprise. We've got the UK's industrial production, manufacturing production, construction output, visible trade balance against non-EU companies, and total trade balance. That's all at 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern. Again, those won't move the markets too much. I'm not going to go over it, especially because at that exact same time, let me rephrase that, at 30 minutes later, you've got the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney speaking in London. He's speaking right after those numbers come out, so those numbers won't matter when they're in the fog of him speaking 30 minutes later. Then again in the UK, 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern, we've got gross domestic product estimates for the UK, 0.6 versus 0.6. Then the big kahuna for every single month, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got Canadian unemployment rate for March. I fooled you, didn't I? Canadian part-time employment change and Canadian full-time employment change. Their unemployment rate is supposed to be unchanged at 0.6. Their unemployment rate is supposed to be slightly higher at 6.7 versus 6.6 last. And then at that exact same time, you've obviously got the U.S. non-farm payrolls number. So the change in non-farm payrolls for March in the U.S. is expected at 177. It was 235 last. Just mentioned that a few minutes ago. Change in manufacturing payrolls is supposed to be 17,000 versus 28,000 last. The unemployment rate, which is much watched, is supposed to be unchanged at 4.7%. Hourly earnings year over year are actually supposed to drop a touch, and average weekly hours is supposed to stay the same. Hourly earnings are supposed to come in at 2.7 versus 2.8, and the average work week is supposed to come in at 34.4 hours versus 34.4 hours last. And lastly, we've got the Baker Hughes rig counts, which comes out at its usual 12 o'clock Central, 1 o'clock Eastern time. That is it for the calendar. Everything is going to point to the non-farm payrolls number in the U.S. and those couple of speeches by Draghi in Frankfurt. Let me turn it over to Mike to show you what he is seeing on the charts.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Euro, US dollar, sharp reversal, 4 days down, euro weakening. If it weakens further, Sunday night, Monday morning, key levels to watch for 106.29 coming in right around here with the rising trend line. That's going to be significant support. If that is broken, 106.08 is the next level down from there. Then 105.97 are the next two levels down. On a rally, watching for a test of 106.79 to 83, then 107.00, then 107.15, and we have the rotation zone coming in looking like it could make a cross, but you will have some resistance up around that declining or hooking 21. So watch for that. Pound rallied the last 2 days up to our major cluster around the 125.54 level. If we get through that Sunday and Monday, 125.76, flattening out 200 and key trend line coming in there. Above there, watch around 125.90 to 126, and then above there, 126.15 on a very strong rally. Pullback support looking around 125.16, then possibly dropping all the way down to 124.82 to 124.88 key area where we have the rising 8 aspect of the rotation zone and GAN levels cluster in there. Yen rallied up to the rotation zone, which you can see there. That's why we call it those levels with the rotation zones, because many reversals happen. Now, if you're taking trades against the rotation zones, you should not have your targets on the other side of the rotation zone. That is very key. If we continue lower, which would be strengthening of the yen, watch for key support coming in around 110.78 to 110.64. Then below that, we're really looking at about 110.48 and then a possible retest of the last swing low around 110.11. Rally back up, resistance at 112.13, followed by 112.47, followed by 112.80 are going to be your key levels higher. Swissy, pretty big reversal in the Swissy. If it continues to go up, watch for 100.36 to 100.45 as resistance. Then above there, we're really looking at coming in around this trend line at 100.61. On a pullback, support coming in around 99.92 to 99.88 is going to be key. We have a hooking 21 rising up to that, which could also find support. If we do break below that, 99.64 is going to be the next level down. Aussie. We continue our down move on Sunday and Monday, 76.20, followed by 76.15, and then we don't have anything until down to 76.02 in a rising trend line. If those are broken, we have a significant level at 75.93. On a rally, watch for 76.52, followed by this key areas in here, which are 76.65, and then above there, significant level and GAN level at 76.74. CAD still caught in the range, tried to dip down, got caught on the 132.83 GAN level and rallied back up. We're still in this range. If it heads back lower, 132.97 is going to be significant, followed by the low set on Friday right around the 132.83. If that is broken, next is this longer trend line around 120. Next is this longer trend line around 132.64. If it moves up, watch for resistance right around 133.31. Followed by 133.62 to 69 area, pretty close to where the high on Friday came in. And if we get above there, 133.81 is going to be very key. Finally, Mexican peso rallied up, tested the declining rotation zone, and fell back down. So that level is going to be key on Sunday and Monday. 18.85.89 would be resistance. Then we don't have anything up until the 19.02.77 level. If it falls lower, support 18.64.34 followed by 18.61.29. And then if we break through there, we have two different trend lines which could be providing support. And then finally, we have our 18.54.27 levels. Those are all the key levels we'll be watching over the next day, day and a half. So I'm turning it back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you guys for watching and supporting us. We will speak to you guys in the next Path Chat. We'll be covering stocks and futures as well, so check those out. Thanks for being here.